Welcome to Compromising Positions. I'm Lianne Potter, cyber anthropologist and head of security operations for a major retailer.
And I'm Jeff Watkins, a cybersecurity enthusiast and CTO for a major tech consultancy. Together, we're the tech podcast that asks the non-cybersecurity professionals what we in the industry can do to make their lives easier.
And help make our organisations more prepared to face ever-changing, human-centric cyber threats. And in this episode, Hack the Neural Network, we are joined by Lianne Potter, that's me, and Jeff Watkins.
That's me.
And we're going to be discussing some crossover points between cybersecurity and AI, and this concludes our AI mini-series, so if you've not already checked that out, do so.
We usually say we'd love this chat, and we hope you will do too, but that's probably a little bit egocentric, and we're about to have the chat, so who knows, maybe later. Anyway, so sit back and enjoy our interview with ourselves.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a change of pace from what we normally do. So we normally get guests in to kind of talk about their takes on AI, but we thought for our final AI miniseries, we'd just talk about ourselves. And the reason why I think we've been talking about a lot lately is just because of the massive impact it's had on our work and also our personal lives and the way we conduct things like the podcast and things like using AI. So Jeff, what sort of drew you into AI and how are you currently using it?
Well, I think there's multiple things. Obviously, I've been in tech for 25 plus years, and I've seen AI move along in that time. And obviously, also being on this podcast, interested in cybersecurity, and finished my study of the master's level in cybersecurity last year in about April, May time. And as part of that, we did also cover AI as a topic just at the time when, as a professional working in the consultancy space, we actually started getting more demand for AI services. And it's, I don't know, I've long since been kind of interested in it, but actually starting to pick up some practical experience with real clients. Also, being swept up as part of that cultural zeitgeist, but also as part of my study as well. And then going, hang on a second, I want to study more of that. And then subsequently being a glutton for punishment, signing up for an artificial intelligence master's, which I'm due to start this month. So I think nowadays, in my opinion, if you're an IT professional, you're not in some way interested in AI, I think maybe you'll kind of get left behind a little bit. How about you, Lianne?
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes I flip between thinking, oh God, am I investing so much time and effort into something that's going to be a fad? Is this going to be the metaverse, for example? But then what's different to something like the metaverse, for example, which, maybe as it currently stands is a bit faddy, but maybe it will develop into something in the future. But how that's different from how we're using AI at the moment is literally I can use it. And I think that's the big difference. In the past 12 months, AI has gone from this big lofty thing where you had to, be a data scientist to use it. You had to be, a computer programmer to use it. Anyone can now use it. I've got quite a lot of friends who are non-technical, and I show them how to use things and how they're going to use it. A few friends of mine use AI, things like ChatGPT to help improve their work. That's nothing to do with tech as well. It's really a democratizing piece of tech that has really influenced not only how I use it, but also how people in my team use it, how I'm seeing the business around me use it. It's just touching absolutely everything. So there are moments when I do think, am I spending too much time on this? That could just be another AI winter coming soon. Is the bubble going to burst at any point? But there's just something about this time at the moment that just doesn't feel the same as it has done in the past with discussions around AI. It does seem a lot more tangible.
It does, and I think, as you mentioned the winter, I think that's really important. Is whenever an AI winter happens, they don't tend to go backwards. It just kind of literally freezes in place or moves very slowly, glacially almost, to push the analogy. And we've taken great leaps forward. It never really goes away. And the fact that over 84% of us are using AI in our daily lives on a daily basis, especially through IoT and other kind of non-desktop or laptop PC devices, I don't think it is going away anytime soon. And I think a whole new, well, not necessarily new, but certainly the adoption of a new or a newer class of AI, Gen AI, is a real game changer. I just don't think it is going away anytime soon. obviously the hype cycle is going to dip a little bit, but it's not going to go away. It's just going to maybe slow a little, but it's going to be so important in my opinion, be very important for our future lives.
I think as soon as it was available for me, I've done this. I've literally gone, okay, I'm on the bus, maybe going to work or going somewhere. I need to create a cover for this podcast, for example, an image for this podcast. And I could just go on Bing AI and put in my prompts, and it's just doing it on my phone. Doing it. That's just to me incredible that we can have that much intelligent process power on my telephone while I'm doing other things.
I do the same. I've got the Discord app on my phone, and I use Midjourney. And Midjourney's been the author of, or at least the backgrounds of a great number of my or even our presentations for the last year, maybe nearly a year now. It's been a great time saver to find exactly the imagery you want. And saw something today I was showing about the directability in these new models, being able to recreate, as long as you give it the right kind of prompts, almost exactly what you want, which is astonishing. Given a couple of years ago, all you had was like swirly, multicolored dog noses from Google Deep Dream. I think it's come along an astonishing amount in the last couple of years alone.
Well, that's a good point. So when I first started with AI, a little over a year ago, it was Weird DALL-E, and just using that just to create, it created terrible images. But that was the idea. That was the fun of it. And as someone who loves like a really good bad movie and really bad special effects, it kind of felt like it was playing into that. So you would put in a prompt and it would spit out the most bizarre, surreal images. And that was just a bit of fun. And I couldn't actually see the practical applications of that, as I say, cut through to 12 months later from these images that I couldn't really do anything with it except share and go and laugh at them and say that these really rudimentary, to now going, actually, I use these images as part of my branding in 12 months, and it's free. Well, we can probably discuss the nature of free, but in terms of, there is no cost to me to do this at the moment, which I think is incredible.
And even when you pay for the service, it's really, because it's been so democratized, it's not expensive. I mean, training up some traditional models, some of these large, very large models, if you had the tin to do it and the time to do it, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you can access this for $20 or $30 a month. I mean, things like image repair as well. If you pay for DALL-E, you can actually you can do things like image repair, which is brilliant for damaged photographs. The entire technology has come along in such a short amount of time, and I think 2024 is going to hold a lot for. I think it's going to be even more astonishing. I'm sure the people in the big tech firms working on these things knows about some of the things that coming up. But even just like late last year, the release of the custom GPTs feature has been a game changer for me alone.
Well, do you want to explain what that is?
So obviously ChatGPT, when we first, I assume by now most people have used it or one of its variants. Every time you start a new conversation and you put in a lot of context and things, and then you get good results. But then custom GPTs allow you to effectively prompt build, almost pseudo train, and you get to test. You say, well, what purpose do you want this for? And so an example was I built one to start doing some very lightweight threat modeling for me to build things like persona non grata and abuse cases, and then to document tag trees, and then said, well, can you document in XML? Because actually, when you try to get it to draw diagrams, it still uses DALL-E and it comes up with bizarre nonsense. But if you get it to do something like XML, then you can actually use that and then import that into diagramming software, which is or just draw it yourself. So I got it to do things like attack trees, and then like, oh, this is really useful. And then I tested and went, oh, that's not quite right. That's not quite what I meant. And you keep refining it, and it keeps saving it, that prompt. And then eventually you can publish that and save it. And effectively, all of that nonsense you'd have to do, even if you kept it in a separate document, you don't. You just start up a new chat with, in this case, I call it Security Sage, and just go, right, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what the product does. Give me some high level product centric threat modeling. And that's a massive game changer.
A couple of things on that. Firstly, listeners, if you are interested in things like threat modeling, attack trees, persona non grata, abuse cases. We have done a whole series of talks on that. I will link it into the show notes. Do check it out if you're not familiar with those subjects. We do go and explain those in quite a lot of depth. But Security Sage, so that's something you've built then?
Yeah, it's just a custom GPT, and you can. And I think they're sometime soon they're going to release an actual proper marketplace for them. Currently, I don't, or the last time I checked, it wasn't live, but there's going to be a proper GPT marketplace. And I think then that ups the level of usability again, because you go, well, there'll be people building stuff that's been quite fine tuned through prompt engineering. I know, Lianne, you've done something quite recently on prompt engineering, and it's basically just packaging up really good prompt engineering and a bit of other tweaking and saying you don't have to bother. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about what you've done in the prompt engineering space, Lianne.
Well, using AI is very easy. There's a real low barrier to entry, as we've kind of gone on over and over again on this. You put in whatever you want in, barring it's not offensive or shady or anything like that, because most open source GPTs or large language models won't let you do it. It'll just chastise you for even thinking about it, which I quite like. But actually getting good results out of it does take a lot of work. And I've been doing a lot about learning how to really get the best out of it, how to use prompts a bit more efficiently to get to where I want. Because I don't know about you, when you were first playing around with it, this was my experience when I was first playing around with it. I was getting results, but it took me a long time to get there. So like I would put in something rudimentary, like if we're going to keep it cyber related, create me a list of questions I would ask to do some threat modeling on a new application I was building. And it would be very, very generic. And then I go, okay, so I work in the retail space. I was saying, now make it specific to threats I would say in a retail space. And then it kind of would, but it wouldn't really recognize what kind of retail space I was being specific about. And I said, okay, right now, e-commerce. And I would just be loads of steps. So there'd be e-commerce UK. And then,
exactly. It's the UK's angle is a big one for me. Whenever I was looking for things like cyber threats, it'd come up with really generic ones. Like, no, probably more UK centric.
Yeah. And so it took a lot of steps. It got there, but I thought there's got to be easier ways of doing that. And I found a really fantastic course, which I'll link into the show notes, from Coursera about prompt engineering. And, we've had past episodes with Helena Hill, who's talked a little bit about prompt engineering. She did a really fantastic course on prompt engineering as well. I think taking the time to learn how to do prompt engineering properly is really important. And what I learned from that was it's all about almost you being a teacher to the large language model and being very verbose. So yeah, I could have just copied and pasted all that, threat modeling, make it retail specific, UK e-commerce. I could have just put that in one thing, but it probably still wouldn't been quite the right results. But it's about sort of asking it, going, you can even ask it questions like, what am I missing here? What would you like me to also include in this? And actually getting those results back help you identify blind spots as well, which was a really interesting technique. It never really occurred to me to ask it questions about how it would actually like me to improve my prompts.
Well, because I think this is always a problem. This is the problem in the Java community when it came to standards and the people implementing it. You're not standard compliant because it behaves differently. Well, we are, but the standard was written in English, and English is not actually that precise. And especially when you are a conversational interface and you go, hi there, Mr. AI, please, will you help me with something? Because you should say please to them, just in case. That can be that's very imprecise. And I think the idea of prompt engineering is almost moving towards not quite a formal language, but certainly more an explicit language, and more taking away the implicit that we might infer from something. And that goes badly sometimes anyway, and making it explicit. And then that seems to vastly improve the results. And some of the other studies I've seen about also then asking it to then ruminate on its own answers to improve the quality of response, which is apparently is how they actually also improve the overall ChatGPT service. They train it, then they ask it to ask itself about its own training and its own answers, and that somehow. And at this point in my AI career, that's unfortunately beyond me from a how the hell does that work point of view, but it's fascinating nonetheless.
I read something recently that ChatGPT on other large language models really respond well to incentives. Even to the point if you say to, and I haven't tested this myself, but this is just what the article was saying. Even to the point if you say, please do this, whatever your prompt is, and I will give you a $20 tip, it will work harder for you. And if you give it say you're going to give it a $200 tip, it'll work even harder. Now, I will again link in the show notes that article, but it's very interesting that from an anthropological perspective, which is another area that I'm really interested in when it comes to AI, that I'm going to be exploring more this year and next in my own further studies, is those very human cultural indicators that we use as motivation tactics coming into these large language models, and how can we leverage those to make AI better. I think that's going to be very interesting, and analyzing to what extent those elements of cultural kind of social contract, I guess, will impact how well AI does.
Yeah, I'm talking about social contracts. I think the invasion of AI and wearables and other things, I think, is a really interesting topic, because we've seen a lot of those AI startups now that started with somebody and then are suddenly valued at 2 billion or something, and they don't seem to have a product yet. But a lot of them are around mixing modes of AI, like voice recognition, computer vision, large language models, mixing all those together with a kind of recording and recognizing. And you think, well, this is moving really quickly. It's all moving really quickly, and a lot of these doing sort of similar things, and there are also a lot of those things you can actually kind of do on your phone already. But wow, we're moving at a real pace, and you have to wonder about things like the privacy.
Yeah, which is a very nice segue. So this is a cybersecurity podcast. So yeah, let's talk about AI and cyber threats. So as someone who, Jeff, you have a really strong interest in, and you do head up the sort of the cybersecurity arm of the organization as well, where you work as well. That's part of one of your many hats. So that's not to downplay the cybersecurity element of your role. You very much are into that. But cybersecurity is my day job. It's literally all I do day in, day out. When I think about AI and cybersecurity threats, and I talk to people in the industry, my peers, I'm terrified. I'll be honest with you. We were struggling as it is already with all the other technological advances. This has just beyond thrown a spanner in the works. This is just thrown a whole B&Q at us. It's really, I have no idea how we're really going to tackle this, because, and it's something I say often on the show, being very underfunded as a function in most organizations, we don't already have the tools we need to do what we need to do now, or the resources, or the skills, the talent, or even just the breathing space to really think about the problems we're facing. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to do it when it comes to these AI threats, with particularly things like deep fakes and voice fakes. We're already seeing quite a lot of attacks like this, and phishing. Particularly for me, when it comes to phishing, we've had a little script in cybersecurity for a long time. Spelling mistake. That's something to pause and think maybe that's a red flag. Domain spoofing, or the wrong domain. Don't click on links, things like that. Unusual syntax and things like that. All those stuff that we've been teaching people to spot have just become a lot more sophisticated, and a lot of that information we've been given for years, and to be honest, wasn't working that well anyways. People still click on things. What are we going to do now that AI is able to write the most convincing phishing emails around?
Well, also, the studies have shown that with the advancements in AI voice technology, we can do live voice replacement. They've shown that a vishing attack, an actual voice phishing attack, is 3 times more likely to succeed because it sounds it's so much more convincing. Because it used to be, well, you could believe things. And, well, okay, you only believe what you hear or see with your own eyes and ears, and then eventually now, well, that's becoming, unless it's in person, it's getting a little bit more vague every day. There have been several successful vishing attacks using things like Lyrebird and other voice replacement technologies, but also they're starting to do it with, as it showed, I think it's Binance, victim of an actual
Yeah.
full Zoom audio video deepfake attack, which is incredibly difficult. It's difficult to comprehend.
Do you want to explain what the Binance one was? Because it's a fun story.
Yeah, so basically, somebody created a deep fake and started inviting people to a Zoom meeting, and started giving these hot new investment takes. And then on Twitter, the CEO was getting thanks for your time. It's really nice of you to spend personal time. He's like, I didn't have a meeting with you. Hope you haven't gone through with any of those investment recommendations. Yeah, and it was all fake. And there's a really good demo video of the CEO of Nvidia. They basically 3D scanned him, and also all of his background, and then just literally recreated it sort of bit by bit until the point where the end presentation was just entirely a deep fake of him. It was not. It was done. That was done in the open. It was just showing that the technology is now that advanced, and this is just the beginning. I mean, you see some of the things like the Elon Musk. I still get on YouTube scam ads like the Elon Musk's new crypto platform,
Mm.
and they're not super convincing right now. But that's kind of yesterday's technology. 2024, 2025's technology. It's going to be really hard to tell. It's going to be you're going to have to look really closely into it. I guess the other go on.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, and I think it's down to the fact that as humans, we want to believe what we see in terms of other human beings. We want to believe what we hear. It's easier to be more discerning when it comes to the written word, but
Hmm.
when presenting with an artifice of a human, if you're not aware if it's an artifice of a human, either voice or video, your first instinct is to trust. Humans always first instinct is to trust, and I think when people say things like, "Oh, AI is going to take our jobs" and things like that, I don't think it's going to take our jobs. I think it's just going to create new ones, and if you're either going to be on the journey where you learn how to use this properly or not. But I do think AI is going to be great at using what makes us human against us when it comes to cyber threats. And it
Well,
is things like the emotion piece. For example, you said earlier, remember to say please to ChatGPT. You don't have to, but we're almost being trained to
hmm.
be
I-
polite and courteous. And
we've already
I'm very
seen
friendly
though.
with ChatGPT. When I use it, I want to be polite and courteous and get it to do things I want it to do.
We're also seeing that we saw this cybersecurity conference recently, that the as defenses are getting better, the actual softest target is the human. And
Mm.
as the believability and the effectively ability to do at scale with open source intel gathering, which AI is going to be really really good at helping craft OSINT stuff. It's just going to be able to be done higher quality scale, and we are the soft target. And that is the statistics are showing that is increasing year on year. I can't
I'm
remember
really
who.
pleased that you used the term soft target rather than weakest link. You get 10
Yeah,
brownie points.
thank you. Can't remember who it was who suggested him. It was in one of the big studies looking at where companies are going with it, and a lot of cybersecurity programs will be moving towards the human, the human behavioral aspects rather than and effectively, as tooling gets better and better, that will be harder and harder to penetrate. As long as people spending on the right tooling, it will be more around being human-centric cybersecurity. So I think your anthosecurity skills will be in demand for years to come.
Yeah, you can only hope. Um, One of the other things I'm worried about when it comes to AI and cyber threats is obviously we don't really understand to a full extent. You can read all the terms and conditions, terms of service when you use these tools. We don't really know where all this information is going. And the safest way to do it is really to build your own, which, you could probably tell our listeners how easy it is to build your own, but I'm worried about the information leak there, particularly. I've read a study recently, and again, I'll link it to the show notes, about how permissive the younger generation are when it comes to their own personal data and personal information. And that really worries me about the long-term impacts of this sponging of data.
I think there's a couple of things, because so having done some GPT-based work, I think there's some interesting stuff around our own sovereignty, around making sure that data doesn't, from a GDPR point of view and from a from a sovereign data point of view, we don't leak too much. There's a personal, I think there's a amount of, I guess, awareness and personal responsibility people need to take. But as somebody who implements systems also, there's not only the large language models, but the availability of those. Like, if people are starting to make them mission critical, you're like, well, what happens if, because OpenAI actually wasn't that stable to start with, what happens if it goes down? And some people aren't really thinking about that. But also, what happens if it does themselves get hacked? It doesn't matter what even if they're being absolute saints with that data, what happens if they get hacked? But also, people don't understand how to build secure AI-based systems that well, because it's not as easy to secure something that's got completely deterministic inputs and outputs. You can, with a calculator, you can probably check, are we putting bad inputs into it? Are we getting the correct output out of it? And it's really, really hard with non-deterministic systems. So I think there's a whole new phase of, what are we doing with this data? How are people treating their own privacy? We've had to, I know there's many companies have had to tell people, don't attach AI bots to Slack instances so they can read the channels with private information. That's madness. But people do it. And then people build stuff on top of these other services. Or even if you're building your own language model, you are exposing yourself potentially, because people can do things like model inversion attacks and actually steal your training data potentially, unless you know how to secure that. It's just a whole new class of, it's not a can of worms, it's an entire palette of cans of worms that we've yet to open, in my opinion, at least.
And I think that's a really interesting point, and we'll probably we should come on to it, because the whole purpose of our podcast is to enable people to be able to use these tools. We're talking about very doom and gloom kind of things here, because we have to be cognizant that this is a very tricky subject. But as we've both said, we both use it all the time, both in our jobs, both personally. So, we do really want people to use these tools. So in a moment, we'll probably go into that. But what I think is interesting is, so I'm also doing a master's next year in data science and AI. So it's a technical master's, so that I can be better prepared to understand when I do a more humanities-led one in philosophy a year or two afterwards. And what struck me when I was looking through the curriculum of the data science and AI one, there is not a single line in about security. There's ethics, great, which is really important, and I'm really glad to see that in there. But there is no cybersecurity in there, and so we are actually training people on this new technology without any cybersecurity backing, and that scares me. Don't worry, while I'm there, I'm going to be a real nuisance to the university and be like, I work in cybersecurity, why isn't this on the curriculum? But the fact of the matter is I won't be able to change anything when I join that course. I might be able to bend some tutors' ears while I'm there, but a lot of courses that are specifying in data and AI are not including anything to do with cybersecurity. Does yours, by the way? Do you know if your syllabus has anything in it?
Like your syllabus, it has an entire thing on the responsible and ethical use of AI and the actual societal implications of it. And it's quite a long module. Great, very interesting. I mean, I did a course recently on it with the London School of Economics, which is really, really interesting. And it does kind of, because of the fact it goes into privacy, and ethics, they do talk about the security, but I don't think they go particularly deep into it. And I think almost feel like there's a separate or in the fullness of time, there will be a separate master's degree in like basically the security implications or security and safety. And I think safety is actually, because we're talking about wearables and impacting maybe people's lives when it comes to mission critical, or healthcare based systems. I think it's not only security but safety, and I think that at some point will become a really interesting specialism. Maybe we'll be there to help shape it when we
But I
look.
do find it's quite scary though. Like,
Mm,
why isn't this included? Because you touched upon that the ethics. Ethics is incredibly important. Don't get me wrong. I think that should be like that's not even an optional module. That has to be a core module. Privacy is not really the same as security. It's all very well and good. I mean, we all live in a house, right? Mum, I'm guessing if you're listening to the podcast,
mm,
you do. You leave your house, you lock your door, you make sure your windows are closed. We all innately know the basics of security, and we apply those similarly in our day-to-day life. But when it comes to me doing a data science and AI course to be able to build this stuff myself, I want a module that literally tells me I am not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to code it this way. I'm not supposed to enable it this way. I want hard and fast rules about how I can make it secure, not privacy concerns, because I get that. I innately get that. But how do I, on a technological level, really prevent bad things from happening here? And these courses are not doing that. And I think that's a real failing. And you did your computer science degree in the past as well. You had no cybersecurity modules on there. You were saying to me before, and
it was
I'm worried.
1995.
Yeah, but but you talk to people who are still doing them today, and
Yeah, there's not a
it's an
lot.
optional module.
I don't think a lot of people understand it in academia. And when I did a computer science master's, I'd say that some of it was of historical interest and theoretical interest, but the actual hardcore stuff, I'd say, is more through practical. I learned a lot through my own things like my own thesis
Mhm.
and my own study and talking to you all the time, than I'd say through that degree. I don't think the academic community, unfortunately, or at least the areas in the UK that I've seen and looked at a few, have a really thorough understanding of the security implications of many things, which is,
Mhm.
I'm sure, hopefully somebody in the comments will actually come along and say, this is an amazing cybersecurity. This university's got cybersecurity down pat, which should be great to hear. Love to see it. I just
Mm.
don't think it's that well developed. And I think it's the same for things like AI when it comes to, and I think this is general industry thing, is testing the quality, not only the safety and the of like the actual scalability and all those other things, but also the quality. Testing quality in AI is really, really tough.
Mhm.
Especially with Gen AI, it's really, really tough. There are methods for it. We've used some of them recently, but it's not trivial. We've only just got to the point where really we've caught up with how to actually do rigorous software testing, automated software testing, so you don't have to manually check everything every time in deterministic systems, and then say, well, actually no, now we're moving to non-deterministic. Good luck with that. I think it's really, really there's I think they're the two biggest for me. The two biggest question marks are the security elements and the quality elements of artificial intelligence, but also how are universities going to keep up with the latest? And I think the answer will be they won't. I mean, they're still teaching Java 1.6 idioms in 2023, so now 2024. So I think they'll always be behind on it. But yeah, it feels like it's missing currently.
So what can we do to plug that gap then, if it's not going to come from academia?
I think it's going to have to be us as a community, and in our case, where we're doing several talks this year on blending the ideas of things like cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, IoT. I think this material has to come from us. I mean, like when we started looking at product security, there's not a lot out there. Unfortunately, it's going to have to come from people synthesizing this. And maybe in 20 years' time, somebody will have it as a module on a degree somewhere, which would be I was to say epitaph. That sounds awfully morbid. It'd be a nice wing, if somebody at some point actually starts including things like the concepts of product security into when we talk about security. How are you? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think we should probably start thinking about now, for our listeners, is what we would recommend people doing to kind of protect themselves in using this, because you must use this. I'm imploring you today is you must use this, but also be mindful that probably if you're a cybersecurity person listening to this in your organization right now, I guarantee your marketing department is using this either with or without your permission. I guarantee your data scientists are using this with or without your permission. You need to get in front of this. You need to not only be the sword and shield, but you also need to be the champion of it, because I think if there's one thing that AI could probably do for us in cybersecurity is it could really boost our rep, because quite a lot of teams, cybersecurity teams in organizations are seen as the blockers to innovation. The Department of No is what it gets called a lot. The Department of Work Prevention is another one I've heard before. We need to maybe latch on to this as something we can be like, look, we really want you to use this and we think it's going to be great for you to use, and this is how you do it. And I'd be interested, Jeff, is you write the cybersecurity policies in your organization. What's been your guidance for usage?
So the main thing has been understanding where your data is going. That's number one. For personal use or for development use, fine. But look at where the attachment points are to the rest of the system or to your company, like putting it on a private Slack channel that contains proprietary information. Like, no, you may not. Using it to reword an email that doesn't contain any personal or IP related content, or maybe to help craft a message that better explains a certain concept. Cool, fantastic. And I think you just have to be really, really clear on that. And also get people to, when it comes to usage, make sure there's good outreach. Make sure people know where to speak to you, because people will have questions because it's a new technology and it's going to change in 2024. We're going to see more multimodal stuff where people are using more images. Will be uploading images. That's the other thing. It's not just text; it's like images as well. When you upload an image, maybe it's a screen grab. What's on that screen grab? Have you accidentally left something on that screen grab you shouldn't have done? What are you leaking when you start using multimodal IT? I mean, the fact that this thing seems to be recording all the time, because whenever we speak about certain topics, then suddenly an advert pops up on one of the social networks afterwards. Like, we're already leaking information like a very leaky bucket anyway.
Just for the benefit of our listeners who are not watching the video, Jeff lifted up his phone, and yes, I'm sure, particularly Jeff's phone. So Jeff is an Android phone, and I'm an Apple phone. Particularly Jeff's phone, it does seem to be picking up a lot of the stuff we talk about.
I do download just like APKs from the dark web. They're called rootkit.apk. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. No, I think the main thing is have an environment where it's of psychological safety, and safety to say, can we do this? Can we experiment and allow people to experiment safely? Like, put some boundaries in place. Like when it came to we need to start doing some open AI work, I created a playground, secured it, gave people their own API keys so they could do it securely. So if something happened, I could revoke that key immediately. So like, we try and put some nice boundaries in place, making sure we have usage limits on, and giving people, like, here's the things here's a sort of effectively an allow list of things we're allowing people to use. I mean, there's some stuff where we'll have to go and check it out, and I think you've got to be at the forefront of it. You've got to be checking some of these services out to decide, are these suitable or not? Because otherwise, it's like if you block YouTube on a corporate network, then people will just use their own personal devices and look at it anyway. Or people will get around. If you try and just block ChatGPT, people will just use it on other device, and people will find ways around it unless you give people a valid avenue to experiment and safely, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in an earlier episode, Christian Hunt I'm a big fan of his, and I will keep going on about it. I'm so pleased that we managed to get him on the show. Did say, you're fooling yourself if you think people are, even if you block it down on your corporate device, you are fooling yourself if you think people are using this off device. And what do you want people to do? I'd much rather create an environment where people use it properly than, to me, that the horror story would be you lock down the device and say, okay, nobody can use it on a corporate device, and then people start emailing corporate documents to their personal email and then do it on there instead. To me, that's a disaster situation waiting to happen. I would much rather be the approachable champion there to enable people to come to me and ask questions like, should I be doing it this way? Which is what I've tried to achieve in the organization I'm currently working at the moment. So I made it very clear to my organization that AI was an interest to me. AI in general, not just the security aspect, which obviously I do really, really care about. So I got people in to come and do talks about AI. So I think, Jeff, you were one of the first people to come in and do a talk about it and really fire people's interest in it, about using it, about the potential to use it. So it wasn't a security talk at all. I hosted it, but it wasn't a security talk. It was about really getting people excited about using it, because I think that's really important, and not it being the scary kind of maybe lofty thing that people, are frightened about using it. And then the other thing I started to do is really start embedding myself into conversation. So I'd hear about parts of the organization using AI and say, oh, can I have a talk about it? Doesn't necessarily have to be about security, but that comes up, which is nice. It's just about being that kind of friendly face and going, look, I'm really interested in this, and I've got a lot to offer in terms of my knowledge about AI to help you utilize this properly. And then we can talk about how you utilize it from a security perspective. It's about getting those initial conversations in, which is why I said earlier, I really think that for cybersecurity teams, AI could be our real hook to be that unique selling point to the organization of where we can really demonstrably add value. Because it's been very difficult in the past for us to demonstrate value to an organization, because unless a cybersecurity incident happens, and if it does, are you really demonstrating value if it does happen? Yeah, that's a question in itself. But if nothing happens, it's really hard to prove that nothing happened was because you're doing a good job, or it's just because you were lucky. Whereas adding value in this sense and going, okay, you can use it, and I'm going to show you how to really use it by doing things like, so I'm doing when I get back to work, in a week's time, I'm going to be doing training courses of how to use prompt engineering properly. It's not going to be a conversation about security at all. It's going to just be, how do you use this tool properly? And then I'm going to do sessions for my team and show them how I've been using it to do cybersecurity efficiencies better. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit more later on. But then sort of a wider one of how you would use it just to, and I think Helena Hill in a previous episode said this, as a springboard for ideas, which is where I see this being really useful in cybersecurity, is things like what we call nowadays security awareness programs, but which I believe is slowly changing into human risk, which is what you touched upon earlier.
Yeah, I mean, we first did a couple of them, workshops on AI ideation, and they've become hugely popular. We've booked in with multiple already for this year, and it's only the New Year's Day today. And there is a great springboard, because you can start talking about, well, what's the possibilities, but also as people who are studying, well, what the ethical and harms implications of that. We'll talk about that, and we also understand the security implications. So there's another really interesting piece from Microsoft about the potential harms, the harms modeling for AI solutions, and actually, if you can start to introduce those into things like these workshops. And you say, well, okay, there's loads of possibility, but stay with, understand what the implications of these possibilities are. And I think that actually moves the idea further forward again. It's not just kind of, oh, let's do some cool stuff. It gets people really thinking about, well, when we say we're going to put this into our product or service, what does that actually mean? And it actually takes the idea much further forward and makes it actually much more concrete, rather than just being a nice 4-hour chat about cool stuff. it actually makes it feel a little bit more thought out, a little bit more real. And as I think, as professionals, I think it's our duty to have a bit of an understanding of that. But it's a lot to take in, a lot to take in, all the security aspects. And for people who aren't necessarily AI professionals yet, the actual, the potential of different elements of AI. It's not just about large language models. It's about things like computer vision, audio recognition, audio generation. There's a whole bunch of different things. But also, there's so many different layers to when you think about the ethics, and as well as the things like privacy and security and the actual potential. And obviously it's a moving target as well, which I think also makes it exciting and also more challenging, because who knows what on January the 2nd somebody else might announce, because there was a time, I think maybe April this year, where you couldn't go 2 days without some big announcement, which is bonkers, and I think it'll happen again.
And one recommendation I have for our listeners is, if you want to start kind of cluing yourself up on this, is a podcast called the AI Daily Breakdown, and I'll put the links into the show notes there. And it's 15 minutes every single day, and literally is something new every single day is coming out in terms of AI, and it gives you that really nice bite-sized piece to kind of understand what the industry is doing. And it can be really scary. Cybersecurity people, I know, to think, oh god, another technology I'm going to have to learn, because to me that's the hardest part of our job is. And I said this before, when I was a software developer, I could just specialize in JavaScript. I could just specialize in Python, and I could make a whole career out of that. In cybersecurity, I need to know a little bit about everything. And I caveat it has to be a little bit, because there's no way you could learn everything. Even if the people we're serving think that you know everything about every technology. But this piece of technology is something you're going to have to get kind of well versed with, I think. And I think podcasts like the AI Daily Breakdown and things like that is a really nice, quick, bite-sized way of doing it to kind of not feel overwhelmed.
One of the things I like to do is look at there's people who like to develop AIs to play games, or AI. So not an AI for a game, as in like an enemy or NPC, but actually AIs to play games. Things like Donkey Kong or Mario, and them going through their coding journey to actually make it work actually shows you a lot, without going into too much technical detail under the hood of how some of the different algorithms they're choosing work. They go through things like the very basic elements of things like neural nets and genetic algorithms and number of other different things, and it's a very visual medium. So there are a load of really, really good explainers and projects out there on things like YouTube and podcasts all over the place nowadays. I mean, Coursera's got so many brilliant courses on there. I think we do live in, thankfully, it's a lot of material. I think it can be quite overwhelming, but we do live in an era where there's just more material than ever for self-learning.
And if you want a really good foundation, I really recommend that. It was Boxing Day. Is it Royal Institute?
Yes.
The Royal Institute did. It's on BBC iPlayer. You check it out on there. Has done 3 or 4 episodes on AI. It is designed for children, but don't let that put you off. Actually, it's really well explained it takes you from the very basics of what AI is, how it works, things like neural networks. It's a really fun way of doing it. Maybe sit and watch it with the kids, because they certainly, I can't stress that enough. Please make sure your kids are starting to understand this stuff, because this is going to absolutely dictate how they're going to work in the future. Work and learn, live, everything. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. But the Royal Institute did a fantastic series of lectures. They're really fun to watch, and the understanding levels are quite low, so you'll just pick up the key concepts really, really quickly. I really enjoyed it, even though I already knew some of these concepts. Yeah. Well, is there anything else that we should kind of mention? I mean, we would love to keep doing more of these AI chats if you're interested. So do, leave us a comment or a review if this is something you want to kind of discuss. It's a bit more out of off-brand to what we normally do. Don't worry, next season we will be following the same format. We've got some amazing guests coming in to talk about cybersecurity. But if you want to see us do any more of these sort of more long-form chats, do let us know. There's loads we could go into, so cyber warfare, identifying cyber attacks, cybersecurity awareness training programs, how to use that more effectively and things like that. We would love to kind of discuss that going forward.
I bet there's some great materials on things like OSINT as well. Using AI with OSINT will be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think as you mentioned numerous times throughout the episode, everything we discussed will be found, can be found in the show notes. And if you like the show, please do give us a review and then maybe reshare on LinkedIn. Maybe share it in your teams as well. I mean, it really does help us spread the word and get high quality guests like us for this time on future episodes.
It was really hard to get us in. Yeah, it was really hard to get us in the calendar and done.
I think it was a really fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, just the start. Listeners, we'll keep you abreast on our AI journey as we both take our masters this year in the subject. Don't worry, cybersecurity will always have a very strong part in our hearts there, but we just want to add our cybersecurity spin onto AI to make that part of the industry as secure as possible. And it remains to be seen is, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I've had a fun time recording with Jeff on this. We hope to see you next time. Keep secure, and don't forget to ask yourself, am I the compromising position here? Ba 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 ba.